Welcome, everyone, to tonight's event to celebrate the final month of the Lady Darby Read-Along. It's so hard to believe that it's been 11 months since we started this journey, but I have absolutely loved every month. It's been just it's been such a treat to spend this time with you and to reread the books and all of that. I am checking to make sure that we are live. And we are good. All right. So if you have any questions, this is your last chance. This is the final one. If you would like to ask any questions about, obviously we're celebrating book 9, A Wicked Conceit. But if you have any questions about any of the books in the series or my writing or any of that, or even Lady Darby Book 10, Perilous Perspective, which comes out April 19th. So 33 days from now. Just go ahead and pop those in the chat, and I'm happy to chat about anything you guys would like to hear about. I also have picked out 2 exclusive excerpts from book 10 to share with you all. This will be the first time that they've been read anywhere, so except for those who happen to get review copies early. So I'm excited to share those with you, but I want to kick it off first with a couple questions that were posted in the Lady Darby Read-Along book group, the group on Facebook. So, and also I wanted to say that group is going to remain active. I'm not going to get rid of it. So you're welcome to go in there and chat to your heart's content together if you want. And I will still be checking it from time to time if you have things that come up, or you just post those questions in my other, either on my author page or in Fanatics or anywhere else. So anyway, but there was lots of great content and lots of great discussions that happened over the past year. So I don't want to delete that page. So it's still accessible. So first of all, I'm going to go with Becca asked, what are your thoughts on doing a novella from Bree's perspective? She said she was thinking and wondering about what happens below stairs at Gage's house. So I have thought about that. It would be a lot of fun to do something where maybe I switched through almost all of their perspectives sometime to show what goes on and to hear in their voices kind of how they view the world and all that. So yeah, definitely. I actually have you bringing that up, Becca, made something kind of percolate in my mind. So we'll see. Maybe one of these days we'll see. I do love Bree, and I'd love to do more with her. So I have a lot of characters I'd love to do more with. So it's a blessing. It's a glutton of blessings, I guess I would say. All these characters I'd like to keep going. Cindy asked, how do you find time to read so many books when you're also writing all the time? So for me, reading is a pleasure. It's something that I really enjoy. A lot of times I'd rather read than watch TV. I love reading. I mean, most authors are readers first and foremost. So to me, reading is not work. Now, I will add the caveat that, we get asked to read these advanced copies of books and stuff, which we love to do. I love to pass, to pay it forward and to read for other authors, read blurbs and stuff. But sometimes that can feel like work just because you're in a rush and you got to get a deadline and stuff. But otherwise, if it's a book I've just picked out to read that I just want to read, it's just a pleasure. So we all need our downtime. So that's kind of what I do. I mean, for fun or just for downtime. And I'm a pretty fast reader. So, and a lot of times I'm mixing in research books during that time too. So but I try to balance it, not always be in work mode. It's too easy to get burnt out if I do that. So I guess that's how I would say that I do. I wish I could read more, honestly. I just don't have time. So I have a lot of to be read books, very large piles, both electronically and physically. So Pat wanted to know, she had a couple things she wanted to know about A Wicked Conceit. She wanted to know, when Kira has her contractions in the end and she doesn't say anything. She honestly does think she has time and she's not expecting what happens to happen. And, she wonders what would have happened if she had not gone along on that last interview. I don't know. Gage might have disappeared. I mean, because none of the Bonnie Brock would have been as motivated to find her. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see. It's something, I guess, to contemplate. I don't know. I would hope he would have been found, but obviously I needed her to be there for the drama story. So it is fiction, you know, we got to up the ante. She also asks about Alana and Kira's kind of argument and the resolution. A lot of what I wrestled with Alana is something that women even today face. And there's this expectation that you're supposed to fall in line and do certain things a certain way. And women who maybe didn't necessarily want to fall in line and do things the prescribed way can sometimes feel resentful of others that don't follow the rules. I found that even modern day, and it's just this, like, it's a jealousy thing, but also it's a low-seated resentment of, you know, well, no, this is the way it's supposed to do, and I did what I was supposed to do, so everybody should do. And it's almost this thing that feeds on itself, and it's really sad, honestly, when you come across that, because, you know, everybody should be able to find their own happiness in their own manner. And so, you know, I see that sometimes with women, you know, well, I had kids, I didn't, and they feel like they were supposed to have kids, and so why are you not having kids? I mean, I'm just giving broad examples, but so that's part of it. And part of it's also obviously her concern, just because it's, you know, what Kira does is dangerous, and, you know, she pushed her into it and was supportive, but also now she's, well, now you have kids, so maybe you shouldn't, you know. So there's a whole lot of emotional stuff that goes into Alana's reaction to that. But I did want to mention that part that was really hard to convey in the right way. And I may not even be doing it verbally right now, but it's something I thought about a lot. So it's one thing that I would say we should all gut check ourselves sometimes when we begin to judge others, if for not following maybe a standard we think is just what and question, why is that the standard, and why do we have to follow that? So anyway, that's the gist of it. So I'm going to check and see if there's any questions here, and then I'm going to jump into the first excerpt from book 10. Won't make you guys wait forever. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys have loved this. I've loved it. It was kind of a one-off just idea. I didn't know if it would work. I thought, you know what? It was the pandemic still. It was like, let's try something different. We're all kind of stuck at home. Let's do something fun. And it's been wonderful. It's been absolutely lovely. And I got to revisit some of the books I haven't reread in years and years and years. So it was fun. Will I be having a Verity Cat read along? Maybe I will. I'd like to take a little break just because it has been work. But yes, I think I would, maybe not this year, but yes, in the future, definitely. So look for that. So, yay, everybody's saying it's fun. I'm so glad. Let's see. Awesome. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and pop those in, and I'm going to do the first excerpt. I gazed down into Emma's sweet face, her blue eyes sparkling and alert. Happier now, I crooned, dabbing at the milk still lingering in one corner of her mouth. As if in answer, she waved one little fist and kicked. Smiling, I sat her upright in my lap, supporting her chest with one hand while I patted her back with the other. It had taken longer than usual to nurse her due to my anxiety over the paintings. As a new mother, I had swiftly learned that if I was worried or distressed, then that would not only translate to the baby, but my milk also would not let down. At the best of times, I took several deep breaths before settling down with Emma. But when she was already fussy because I was late feeding her, that only compounded the problem. It was moments like these when my insecurities would rear their ugly head. For months before her birth, I'd fretted over whether I would make a good mother, whether my temperament and occupations would make me a suitable one. Fortunately, those fears had since all but faded, especially when I cradled Emma in my arms and gazed down into her little face, my love for her filling me to the brim until I felt it would surely run over. But there were still times when doubts crept in, when Emma could not be soothed, and I worried my abilities weren't equal to the task. which made me all the more grateful for Mrs. McKay, Emma's nurse. This evening, she had done her best to soothe Emma before my arrival, but it had already become apparent that my daughter had a mind of her own, and that meant when she wanted to eat, then and there. The nurse had made clear to us how important schedules were for children, as well as their parents, and recognizing the wisdom of this, we had done our best to comply with the suggestion. But to paraphrase the sage Robert Burns, our best laid plans often went awry, and Emma seemed to revel in breaking them. The door to the dressing room opened quietly, and Gage peered through, knowing well how any sight or sound could distract our daughter even while she was eating, her curious mind at least temporarily overruling her hunger. Upon finding Emma seated upright, he mouthed the word, "Done?" "Yes," I replied, and he advanced into the room, having changed from his riding attire into a coat of deep green superfine and brown trousers. His hair was still damp at his temples, and I could smell the starch from his fresh cravat, mixed with the spicy scent of the cologne he must have reapplied. Catching sight of him, Emma offered him a toothless grin, just as a loud belch erupted from her tiny stomach. Considering all the air she'd swallowed while she was crying, I wasn't surprised. "Ate your fill, I see," Gage said, reaching down to lift her from my lap. He swung her around in his arms and she laughed, one of her most recent developments, and one I was still charmed upon hearing every time. So I smiled, even as I was scolding her father. "She won't remain full for long if you keep swinging her about like that, and you'll be changing your coat yet again." I moved closer to tickle Emma's chin. "I can just hear Anderley's reaction to baby vomit," I crooned, as if it were the cutest thing in the world. A chuckle rumbled from Gage's chest. Point taken. I know you all have been wanting to see Kira and Gage and Emma, their family all together, so I thought I have to share that little one. I comes early in the book, so no spoilers. Emma sounds like Kira. Yeah, she does a little bit, doesn't she? So what else would you guys all like to talk about? Yeah, go ahead and post. A Wicked Conceit, since I'm supposed to be talking a little bit about that book. I know I've talked about how a lot of the plot for that came from the book Murder by the Book, which is about an actual crime that happened, but it happens about 8 years later. And I just couldn't resist finding a way to use it because it was so just perfect, especially to get to use Bonnie Brock again because they're in Edinburgh. And I know you guys all love Bonnie Brock. So it was a lot of fun to mix that in. And of course, Bonnie's, it's hard to resist wanting to use him because he's just such a fun foil. And I hope to get to use him again in the future. They're moving away from Edinburgh. Obviously, in book 10, they're in Argyll, which is on the western coast of Scotland. Like south of Isle of Skye, south of Oban. It's in the ancient Scotland area where they used to crown the kings, 1,500 years ago, more than 1,500 years ago. So it's beautiful. It's just beautiful country, and it's very rural still. There's not a lot of people who live in this area, and it's kind of mountainous, and it's just interesting. There's settlements along the coast, but like inland, it's boggy, and there's mountains, and it's just a beautiful area. We actually drove through there on the way. We drove from Glasgow up past Loch Lomond, and then through that area up to Oban before we went up to Skye the last time we were in Scotland. And it's just beautiful, and it was one of the areas I enjoyed the most because we had like a lot of the sites that we went to just all to ourselves. I mean, like we climbed up to Carnasser Castle just by ourselves. There was like one other person leaving when we got there, and I mean, it was just gorgeous. It was lovely. And so I wanted to use that spot, and it was just perfect for setting Barbrick's manor house there, Lord Barbrick. And so, yeah, and a lot of the plot kind of came out of things in that area. And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I got to go into art forgery, which you guys will all find out. And so we get to, revisit art with Arya, with art with Kira. Anyway, yes, Bonnie Brock is fun. And yes, Murder by the Book, highly recommend. It's a great book. How hard was it to travel to rural areas, especially with a baby during the 1830s? Yes, it wasn't necessarily easy, but fortunately it's summer. If it had been winter, it would have been impossible. So it's definitely a journey, and they do take some of it on boat. I mean, we have to remember that just because it was hard to get to areas, and they are along a sea lock. So it's easier to just take a boat up that way. So yeah, but definitely some of the rural areas is more tricky. In the summer, it's definitely way easier to get there. And then I'm finding this as I'm writing book 11 right now, they are, traveling some more. I don't want to give too much away, but they're traveling on some main thoroughfares, and there's a big difference between the rural areas and the main ones. The main ones were really pretty quick. I mean, very quick. So when you consider the time period. So yeah. So yes. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions yet. So I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to go ahead and share the second excerpt, unless you guys have another question you're going to pop in, just because I know they're kind of fun. And I think you guys all would like to meet Mrs. McKay, the nurse. So this is another person I've gotten a lot of questions. I want to meet this nurse. So let's see. This is later on. Okay, yes, this is all later in this same scene that I was reading earlier. Gage smiled in commiseration and then strode across the room to rap once on the adjoining nursery door while I lifted Emma and her rag doll. A moment later, Mrs. McKay came bustling through the door, her silver hair tucked neatly inside a lace cap. I didn't know precisely how many generations of children she had raised in her lifetime, but Emma was certainly not her first, or even her second or third, and somehow I doubted she would be her last. Despite the wrinkles which had settled into the grooves of her face and the gentle sagging of the skin around her neck and beneath her eyes, she still brimmed with energy. We had struggled to find just the right nurse to fit the needs of our little family, one who wouldn't mind the somewhat nomadic lifestyle we led at times, for I had absolutely no intention of leaving my child behind as we traveled about. Not that I could at the moment, nursing as I was, but I had wanted to be sure they understood that that wouldn't change even when she was older. Because most children of the upper classes remained at a country house in the charge of their nurse and her staff while their parents traveled. I knew this would not appeal to all potential nannies, particularly experienced ones. There was also the matter of my scandalous past and Gage's efforts as a gentleman inquiry agent, which I assisted him with. We had solved a number of intricate investigations over the past 2 years and unmasked several murderers. And while we had recently taken a respite from such activities since Emma's birth, that didn't mean we had given them up entirely. If someone needed our help and it was in our power to give, I knew we would never say no, even if Gage had made it clear to his father, who was also a gentleman inquiry agent of great renown, that he was no longer at his beck and call. The fact that we dabbled in such matters was unattractive to some would-be applicants and downright disagreeable to others. But not only did Lettice McKay possess the experience and impeccable references we desired, but she also seemed to possess a desire for adventure that she'd heretofore been unable to indulge. She confessed that one of the reasons she'd applied was specifically because she wanted to travel. Before now, she'd been trapped at a pair of manors located in the countryside of Midlothian for decades at a time. After so many years in one place, she wished to see more of Britain or even Europe, and the only way she was likely to ever do that was to find a place with a family like ours. Given the intrepid natures of many of the members of our staff, the nurse had seemed to settle in easily. I knew my maid, Brie, a fellow Scotswoman, liked her, as did our butler, Jeffers, who was still back in Edinburgh. Gage's valet, Anderley, didn't spend much time conversing with me unless we were in the midst of an investigation he was assisting us with. But I had heard him laughing at one of her jests one evening, which I viewed as an encouraging sign. And as for her care of Emma, I was more than pleased. She was warm and kind, often singing and talking to her. When I approached the nursery, I could tell whether my daughter was asleep or awake simply by listening for the sound of her nurse's voice, for she seemed to chatter almost nonstop about everything and nothing when Emma wasn't resting. Had I been the one forced to listen to her nonstop, I might have run screaming from the room, but Emma didn't seem to mind. Mrs. McKay was also steady and confident, and having raised so many children, nothing seemed to rattle her. Emma being my first child, I appreciated this tremendously, for Mrs. McKay's calm often soothed my own worries, and yet I detected no condescension in her when I asked her a question or solicited her advice. I had been warned by my sister, Alana, that some nannies could be very set in their ways and determined to have things done how they'd always done them. But thus far, I'd had no such clashes with Mrs. McKay. Of course, with Emma being less than 4 months old, that might change, but for now, it was not a concern. and I wasn't about to go borrowing more trouble when I already had a forgery to denounce. Did we fill our belly? Mrs. McKay asked Emma as she approached, offering her a gentle smile. Emma pulled the rag doll from her mouth, offering her a slobbery grin in return. She did, I confirmed, somewhat unnecessarily, given the fact she'd been wailing like a banshee when I'd taken her from Mrs. McKay 3/4 of an hour earlier. I pressed a kiss to both of Emma's cheeks before passing her to her nurse. I'll be back in time to feed her before I change for dinner like usual, and I won't lose track of the hour this time, I added somewhat fretfully. Oh, there's no need to worry, she assured me. The bairn just had to exercise her lungs for a wee bit, and she needs to do that from time to time anyways. 'Tis good for her. I laughed lightly, feeling I shouldn't need this reassurance, but grateful for it nonetheless. Gage dropped a kiss on Emma's downy blonde head while I checked my appearance in the mirror, adjusting the epaulets on my sleeves and the high neckline of my morning gown, small floral bouquets over a white background. Then we set off arm in arm in search of Lord Barbaric. Just some bad news for him. So there you go. Those are your sneak peeks. And yes, I hope you fall in love with Mrs. McKay because she's just a fun addition to the series. So yeah. And it's nice to have a little bit of an older cast member, I guess I would say. So when will we see more of Lord Gage? Well, he is a big part of book 11. I will tell you that. So he is not physically in book 10, but book 11, he definitely is present in book 11. So, or he has a definite presence. I don't know. I don't want to give too much away. So, he would like to see more of Trevor. He is my kind of gentleman. Yes, I would like to do more with Trevor too. I need to come up with, I've got some stuff percolating. So it's funny. Like I said, I have this embarrassment of riches of all these great secondary characters that I've come up with that I would love to do more with, and they just people this world. And so it's almost like when I'm coming up with plots, I'm like, okay, who am I going to do something with next? You know, it's like trying to find ways to shuffle them all in. So yes, I have not forgotten him. I have not forgotten Alfie and Lorna down in Dartmoor. I have not forgotten, Lord Gage's father's relatives, because we have not visited any of the Gages or the Roscarricks, the scoundrels and smugglers out in Cornwall. Marsdale, I'm not done with Marsdale. Bonnie Brock, obviously, people always ask about him. And Alana and Philip and their kids, and I'm trying to think of anybody else that I hear a lot about that I need to bring back, bring back the hits. So they are definitely in the mix of my thoughts. And I would love somehow, it's finding the right way to do it, to maybe take them to Italy and we encounter Anderley's relatives. So, or maybe go see Breeze in Scotland near Kirkcaldy. So if there's anybody I'm missing, let me know. So, but they're all percolating there, I would say. And I love getting to write the scenes with Kira and her friends, and it'd be fun to be able to do that again. Those were a lot of fun to write in book 7 and Artless Demise. Yeah, the London one. Anyway, so if you have any other questions, I will jibber jabber here for a couple more minutes. So anything you want to hear, go ahead and pop that in the chat so I don't miss it. As I said, this has been an absolute delight. It's been so much fun. And yes, I would love to do a Verity Cat one. Maybe give me some time, another year or so. And I have I should mention that I have a lot of events coming up next month for the launch of A Perilous Perspective. And I really hope that you will join me for at least one of them or all of them, whatever you can do. Some of them are actually in person. So be sure to check my website. I will be headed with some other authors kind of on a little road trip to a conference, and we're doing a couple of live book events. So that'll be fun. You can also get autographed copies. If you want to order an autographed copy, you can get an actual autographed and request personalization from Mystery Lovers Bookshop in Oakmont, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, and Mechanicsburg Mystery Bookshop in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. And you can get a book plate autograph copy from Murder by the Book in Houston. So be sure to check those out. They're all great stores. So if you would want an autographed copy, those are your 3 options that I can tell you about. And just trying to think if I've missed anything, but yes, there's lots coming up. Oh, and I'll be chatting next week with Rachel McMillan, who I had a lovely time chatting with Tuesday night. I know some of you watched that. I'll be chatting with her, and I'll be chatting with Susan Elia McNeil and Ashley Weaver, just like we did last year. We're getting the band back together. We just have so much fun just kind of chatting. So, and letting you guys all kind of listen in and ask us what you want to know. And anyway, it's just a fun evening. So that's next Wednesday on March 23rd at 8 o'clock. So on my Facebook Live again. So will we hear more about Charlotte and Rye? So yes, Charlotte and Rye are a big part of book 10, which is coming up in a month. And then I don't know I'm not sure what I'll be doing with them from after that, though they're in the mix too. But yes, they're a big part of book 10. So they're not going anywhere, but you'll get to see them next month, I guess is what I should say. Oh, yes. Thank you. I know I'm a new auntie. I have a new niece that was born on Tuesday. So thank you very much. I can't wait to meet her. Let's see. What about Brock's feelings for Kira? We talked a little in the group. Yeah. So that was a good discussion we had there. Yes. So Bonnie Brock, there's a, it's like, what are exactly are their feelings for each other? They have kind of this kinship, this understanding of each other that other people don't. Kira is a gentlewoman, and he expects gentlewomen to be a certain way, and she's definitely not. And he can tell she's faced hardship, and she also reminds him of his mother. I kind of bring this up, who was an artist and did not have the easiest of life. And so it's funny. I think Bonnie Brock would feel romantic towards her, and he does to a certain extent, but he also understands that Kira loves Gage. And so while he gives Gage a really hard time, he understands that there will never be something between him and Kira, but he feels protective of her. It's a funny thing, because he's not felt like that about anyone for a very long time. I'm just kind of ruminating on him, from after he was betrayed, where we find out when he was 13, and Maggie is his whole world. I mean, he protects her. And then suddenly here comes Kira, who kind of knocks him off his axis and shakes things up. And so he feels this affection for her, but he's also still Bonnie Brock, and he's also, he's ruthless, and he's, the head of this gang, and he does terrible things. So he's an interesting anti-hero. I would call him an anti-hero for sure. So, and I would love to do something with him separate, like to really be able to delve into his world and how to give him a happily ever after. In some ways it's tricky. Yeah. Yeah, because he has done bad things, and it was his own choices, even though he was set up from bad life, but he could still have a happily ever after. We'll see. Anyway, so yeah, it's one of those tricky things. It's like, well, he's done bad things. Everybody did bad things to deserve it. He does have his own set of rules and his own set of code of honor. So yeah, I mean, anyway, he's an interesting character. Not to go too deep into it, but yeah, so he and even Kira, she recognizes all this. She can see that he's more than the sum of what he's been made to be. So I think it's this big thing that they see something in each other that most people don't. So they can see deeper, and they connect in a certain way. And so that's why there's this strange friendship that's developed, really. So Gage just kind of humors Kira about it a little bit. So because he loves her and he trusts her and he understands her instincts are spot on most of the time. So I hope that answers that. So, yes. So anyway, if any other questions, last chance. And otherwise, this has been awesome, guys. I can't believe it. So, and I cannot wait for you guys to read book 10. I really can't. I cannot believe that we're at double digits. It's just such a privilege that I've gotten to write this series for this long. when you start out, you just never know. I mean, you get a 2 or 3 book contract and you hope and pray people want to read it and that they buy it. And because that's what it comes down to. If the books aren't selling, the publishers aren't going to offer more contracts. And so, you hope and you pray that people connect with the characters. And the fact that you guys have gotten me to this point, I've been working on an article about long running historical mystery series with female sleuths that'll be published next month. And I was searching, trying to make a comprehensive list. And I realized there's really not a ton that have made it to double digits. And so to be in that company is just an extreme honor. And I just want to say thank you. I thank you guys for continuing to read and for loving these characters and embracing them and, my other books. And it's just a great honor. And I'm just tickled. And yeah, I don't want to start crying. So anyway, but you guys are awesome. And just a big thank you for that. And yeah, so I guess that's all I have to say. So yay, we made it. The end of the read along, and book 10's out in a month. And yeah, so hope you'll pre-order your copy and all that good stuff. So if you need anything, always you can message me, and that either through my website or on my social media. And I wish you guys all the absolute best and hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night.